As some of you may know, we've recently launched 2020 census shapes. We now allow block editing, and we just recently added 2019 ACS estimates. So I'll be sure to touch on that. I don't know how familiar each of you is with the tool. Some of you it may be new to you. Some of you may be quite experienced with it. I'm going to try to go through everything at a pretty basic level, so there's a common understanding. What I'll do is I'll try to take a couple. I'll try to remember to take a couple breaks. If there are any questions at any point in time, I find that's a little easier than trying to answer questions as we go along. Although, Angel, if something pops in that you see, and it looks like it's something you ought to let me know about, please do. But I'll try to reserve a few periods for questions. So I'm going to share my screen now. And I'm hoping everyone can see our homepage. And I'm just going to reposition a couple things. So actually, this is, if you've been on Dave's Redistricting recently, you'll notice this is a new map. Dave just launched this last night. And what it does, it's kind of cool. You can click on any state, look at any state, and see how many published maps there are for each state. So you'll get a little bit of a sense of some of the states that are more active than others. Some are not surprising, like North Carolina, Michigan, Wisconsin. I was a little surprised to see Alabama. Georgia's not a surprise. I was a little surprised to see Alabama ranking so high. So there's some active users there. But anyway, it's a neat little way to look at the map and see what's been going on in terms of what our users are doing. The one thing I would like to say before I start is I'm going to go through a lot of stuff. It's a lot to take in. And the best thing to do, if you're not familiar with the app, is just to get an account, log on, and just play with it. Build maps, create them, delete them, change them. You can't break anything on the platform. So that's really the best way to learn stuff. I've been with the team since January of 2020, and I'm still learning stuff about the app when I use it. So it's really the best way to go ahead and learn things. I am not logged in right now. And you can tell that because there is the login and the sign up button. And I'm actually going to spend a bit of time as a non-logged in user, because you can actually see quite a lot about the app without being logged in to make a new map. And then after we go through this part where I'm not logged in, I'll try and take a break for questions, and then we'll log in. So the main thing to remember about being non-logged in is you can look, but you can't edit. So you can look at all of our official maps, and those are the maps we have for the 50 states in DC, and you can really get a sense for what the maps look like. We've got 116th congressional official maps. We've loaded those maps with 2020 shapes and 2019 ACS, so they're the same maps, but the data is different. It's interesting to get that comparison. And of course, we have all the state legislative maps. There are 3 ways from the home screen. And one thing I'll say up front is this logo in the upper left, that's always how you get back to the homepage. There are 3 ways from the home screen to look at a state map. You can click on the pick a state button and then find a map here, find a state here, and then go to a map. You can click on any state on the map, and that takes you to that state's homepage. And that takes you to the state page for that state. And from that page, you will see the 3 current maps. So the 1 congressional and the 2 state upper and lower house. You see our notable maps. And these are maps that stand out because they are rated the best for the individual attributes of the map: proportionality, competitiveness, minority representation, compact, and least splitting. And we've got this is new, the maps, it defaults to 2010. As people start building 2020 maps, we'll have notable maps up for 2020 as well. And lastly, at the bottom, we've got a link to resources for that particular state. So we've got 3 links to outside sources: Brennan Center, Princeton Gerrymander Project, and Ballotpedia. And then as we identify states that have updated their 2021 redistricting pages, whether it's a legislative process or a process to the commission, we're also adding that link as well. So those are all resources for you. Go back to the home page. And then the last way to get to an official map is to click this triple bar next to the logo. And you'll see this maps item right here. And again, when you're not logged in, the only maps you'll see here are official maps. So these are all the official maps for all 50 states and DC. You can use these categories to sort. So for example, if I type the column heading state, WA, I now see the maps for Washington state. And again, as I mentioned, we've got the 116th congressional, and then we've got that same map with 2020 shapes and 2019 ACS, and we call that WA 2020 congressional. All right, so I'm going to open, because I am in the great state of Washington, we're going to open the Washington map, and I click on it here, and then I click view, and it's going to open the map and populate it with the current districts. So one thing I'll just point out, I just discovered that this morning, actually, when I was playing around on the site. You'll see this convert to 2020 button. That button shouldn't be here because, again, I am not logged in, so I can't edit things. So that's a bug we have that we're going to fix. The reason why that button is there is when you are logged in, if you have created a map using the 2010 shapes, we have an automatic update feature where you can convert that map to 2020 shapes. But that should not be there right now. So again, we're going to see all the components of DRA here as a non-logged in user, but they're all sort of visible and accessible. So the first thing to notice is we're in view only. And I already described that because I'm not logged in, so we can't edit. This panel here in the upper left is called District Selector. And that shows the 10 districts for the state of Washington. They're color-coded to match the map. It shows the population of each district and the deviation from what should be the population for each district, but everyone, some have no variant deviation and some have very small ones. And so that's the tool you will use when you're creating a map to create districts. So as you click on an individual district, that's the district you'll be editing when you're in that mode. You also will see this thing called that's unassigned population. That is at 0, as it should be, because that means all persons in the state have been assigned to one of the districts. And again, the deviation is a deviation from the target population. Below District Selector is District Details, and I'm going to click on the pin, and that's going to pin District Details to the map. And what this does is for any district that you choose in District Selector, you see those details here. And specifically what you see is the population information, the voting age population, and sometimes that's going to be Cbap, depending on how you've set up a map. And then you can see the partisan voting information for that district. So again, as I change districts in District Selector, my district details change to show me what that district looks like. It can be helpful to have this pinned to your pinned when you're building districts, because as you're adding precincts, you can see your district change real time and you can see what it looks like. Okay, I'm going to unpin district details now. And next we'll go to colors. Oh, which was already open. Sorry about that. So right now, colors is set to map colors, which just means the map is going to have the color scheme that aligns with District Selector. I can instead click partisan lean. And what this shows me is the partisan voting data for each of Washington's 10 districts. So I can see the very blue or Democratic districts. I can see the very red or Republican districts, and those with lighter shading are closer to being more competitive districts. I can also go to the precinct level and look at that same partisan data, but at a much more granular level. So here I see the same color scheme, but it's on an individual precinct by precinct basis. And again, the very blue precincts in the state. And of course, you'll see the concentration in Puget Sound around Seattle and Tacoma. And then those areas that are more Republican. Again, a very useful tool depending on what your objectives are. For instance, if you're trying to create competitive maps or proportional maps. If the other option at a precinct level is to look at demographics. So this shows information about minority populations on a district by district, on a precinct by precinct basis. Right now it's showing all minority groups. If I click the down arrow, I can pick an individual minority group and look at that group's population throughout the state. So for example, if I pick Native, you'll see some of the areas in Washington state that have concentrations of Native Americans. I'm going to close colors. Oh, sorry, close overlays, which I just was in. Oh, sorry, close colors and go to overlays. Overlays give you more ways to visualize the map. If I go back to colors and just turn that off, basically now you see the background information. So kind of similar to what you'd see on Google Maps if you zoom in. So if we zoom in here, you'll see, things that look like streets and other landmarks. You zoom in enough and you get to buildings and such. By the way, zoom in, zoom out, and this always snaps the map back to the state view. I can add precinct lines, which gets very busy when the map is of the full state, but very helpful when you're working at the precinct level and building your districts. I can add labels to the precincts. And when I do that, I get the option to identify each precinct with 3 pieces of information. So name, total population, and Republican voters. And when I apply that, you'll see each of those pieces of information for each precinct. That's interesting. It is not applying. I don't know why. I'm not sure what's going on there. Oh, there it goes. A little slow. And again, when the map is zoomed out like this, it's not super useful, but as you zoom in, more of these precincts will fill in and you can see. So that's the name of the precinct, that's the total population, and that's the number of Republican voters. Okay. I'm going to snap this back out to full state. Unclick these. We can add county lines. We can add county labels. And we can add city lines, which again, much more useful when you're zoomed in, when you're building districts. If you want to try to not split a city, for example, it's a useful tool, useful feature, excuse me. So I'm just going to unclick a bunch of these. We'll add colors back. And then lastly, we have this thing called custom overlays. I will demonstrate this later when we're actually building a map, but this is how, for example, you can import a map from another platform, let's say a community of interest from District R or Representable, and you can overlay that on one of your DRA maps. I'm just going to clean this up a little bit here. So I already described the magnify in and out button, the zoom to state button. when I click on counties here, those county lines pop back up. But the important thing to highlight here is look to the far right of the screen at county details. What happens here is when I've selected county and I move my cursor over individual counties within the state, I see that same information, population and composite voting that I was seeing when I was looking at the district information. So again, as you move through the state, you can see what each county looks like. Similarly, if I go to precinct here, now my precinct lines aren't showing right now because I turned those off. I'll just turn those on real quick. And this would work whether or not precinct lines were on, but the same action. When I move my cursor, I see information about individual precincts throughout the state. Again, a useful feature when you're building a map. You can see what's going to happen to a particular district, how many people you're going to add, what kind of demographic might be added, or what kind of voting might be added. I'm just going to give ourselves a little more screen space here. Okay, now on the upper right of the screen, statistics. Statistics offers a bird's eye view of the state on a district by district basis. It's part of our, even though it's got a separate button from analytics, it is part of our analytics. So what you see is you see each district, you see the population of each district. You can confirm that no one is unassigned or that everyone is assigned. You can see the deviations, and here they're all 0% because they were so small in absolute terms. This column will tell you whether or not you have a non-contiguous district. If one were non-contiguous, you'd have a red X here. This will also tell you whether or not you've embedded one district within another. You see the partisan lean information, again, the same blue-red scheme. For those districts that are between 55-45, they're neutral to demonstrate that they're more competitive. And you can see all the demographic information on a district by district basis. Some people use this feature after they've already built their map. Some people use it as they're building a map. I like to go back and forth, and it gives me a sense of what I'm creating. But it's a super useful tool to give yourself a sense of what the data in the map looks like holistically. To the right of statistics is analytics. Analytics is a pretty powerful tool. There is a lot packed in here, so I'll do a brief overview, but what I'll suggest is, if you're interested, just go spend some time, read all the information in here and get more familiar with it. But basically what we do in analytics is we assess each map along 5 criteria: competitiveness, proportionality, splitting, compactness, and opportunity for minority representation. These are assessed individually. We do not weight these or prioritize these. We never say that one is more important than the other. This is up to the individual map maker. These are scored with raw data, and then we normalize the data to come up with a scale of 0 to 100. And that normalized data, of course, is in comparison to other similar maps. So for example, for the Washington 1/16th, you can see, relatively speaking, it does better on proportionality, kind of in the middle in competitiveness and compactness, and less well for minority representation and splitting. And again, that's compared to all the similar maps on days redistricting that have been built for the state of Washington. If you scroll down, when you scroll down the screen, you'll see this basically tells you that your map is complete, if you will. All the districts, all the precincts have assigned contiguity, and you don't have embedded districts, and you have equal population. So you've met the basic requirements. That's not a legal description. That's sort of a days redistricting description. And then for each component, so here we are in proportionality, you'll see a raw measure, you'll see a description, and you'll see that normalized rating. And for each section, there's an information button, which when you click on it, it takes you to medium.com, which is where we post articles and information about how to use days redistricting. So that is throughout this part of the site. So here you see proportionality. Here you see competitiveness, again, the raw metric, the normalized rating, and similarly for minority representation. For compactness, you see the REOC and Polsby Popper, and then the rating, and then for splitting. The other aspect of this I want to show you is this compare maps feature. This is I think it's a really cool feature. What it allows you to do is two things. It allows you to do a sort of one-to-one comparison for two maps. So for example, if I move the toggle to the right, I get a pick list of similar maps. Again, these are all going to be Washington congressional with the 2010 shapes. So I see this map called super competitive. So obviously someone was trying to build the most competitive map he or she could on days redistricting. I click the checkbox. I click apply. And now you see this super competitive map in orange on top of the green congressional official map. And what you notice right away is what was described in the map. It's much more competitive than the one we were looking at. And in fact, it's a bit more proportional as well. What I find super interesting about this is it gives you a sense about how to think about trade-offs, because we tend to think about these criteria. These are sort of the 5 more common criteria. There are others, and thought need and sort of different states have different priorities, either constitutionally or legislatively, about how maps ought to get built. Sometimes those decisions involve trade-offs. And what I find really interesting about this feature in particular is it's pretty clear to me that what happened, I should say it's pretty clear to me, what I infer is in order to create a more competitive map in Washington state, you have to sacrifice splitting, which went from 25 to, it looks like effectively 0, and compactness. And so sacrificing or deprioritizing these two, compactness and splitting, had a very significant impact on competitiveness, and also a non-trivial impact on proportionality. And that that's not terribly surprising to me in the abstract, but you look at maps and it really gives you a sense of how you can think about trade-offs. The other thing I'd like to show you here, which is another really cool component of compare maps, is once you compare two maps, you go down to this section here and you see this thing called ratings compared to similar maps, and you see the box charts below it. So what happens here is you're now looking at the official map, and when I move the cursor, a lot of stuff's going to pop up on the screen. Ignore it for now, but you see the larger circles of these alongside these maps. Those larger circles represent the official map, and the other dots represent all the other similar maps on days redistricting. Now, Washington is a state that doesn't have a huge number of maps. If I had picked a North Carolina map, you'd see 10x the number of dots as you see here, or something like that, or I don't know, 5x. But what's interesting here is you can see where specifically where the official map, how it relates to all the other maps that are created. And when you move the cursor over any one of these charts, a bunch of information pops up. It gets kind of busy, but you can see for splitting, the maximum score is 82. The top of the third quartile is 60.5. The top of the first quartile, or the bottom of the second quartile, is 10.5. The median is 27, and the minimum is 0. And you'll see that for all of these components. So sometimes you'll see maps where there's a real cluster along one one set of range of values. So you see a little bit here, but there really aren't enough maps. But again, a great tool just to see how your map or a particular map compares to all the other maps. Within analytics, we have a download as a PNG file. You can do that here. So if you're making a presentation and you want to copy it into the presentation, I just made a copy, which is going to be in my downloads folder now, and I can go ahead and paste that into a presentation. So that's analytics. Next, very briefly, also a part of it, analytics, is this thing called advanced. Advanced is just as it sounds. It is a set of pretty advanced analytics. I personally spend very little time here. A lot of the measures you see here will be measures that are sort of talked about in lawsuits, so you'll read about in the academic literature. So for example, there's a rank votes graph, there's a seats to curve graph, seats to votes curve graph. There are various bias measures, responsiveness measures, details on compactness, and a section on demographic voting. Again, this is really for the expert user. If you're going to use it, take your time to read the information about it and familiarize yourself with all these components. So that's my sort of non-logged in tour of Dave's Redistricting. And before I log in, I'll just pause. And if anyone has, Angel, if anyone has a question or if anything has put anything in chat, I can try to address that now. And if not, I'll just march on.
Yeah, we actually have 3 questions in the chat if you wanted to take a look.
Okay. Let's see. Can you talk about how converting an existing map to 2020 shapes may affect district lines? Is there any spot checking or manual editing? So great question. So the Census Bureau published its new shapes for the 2020 census, and those shapes are different from the 2010 census. So with respect to any particular district that exists today, there'll be some small differences in the shape of that district because one particular precinct or one particular block is no longer the same as it was 10 years ago. The convert feature is meant to be a feature for convenience. And so if you have been a long time Dave's Redistricting user and you created a Michigan map with 2010 and you're intending to testify before the Michigan Redistricting Commission and you click convert, you are absolutely going to want to go through and tweak that map because you'll have issues with respect to equal population. You'll have issues with respect, well, actually mostly to equal population because of the changes in the data, because we're also now using 2019 ACS data. So you'll have differences in shapes and differences in data, and you'll want to tweak that map to get it to where you want it. So it's meant to be a matter of convenience versus starting that map from scratch. So hopefully that answered the question that was asked. But yes, go ahead, please go and look at your map and make sure you're happy with all the districts, all the numbers. If you were aiming for competitiveness, you might have to rework that a little bit because it won't have the same competitiveness as you had in your older map. So Cbap versus, the question is, please give more detail about use of Cbap. We want district maps that are based on total population, not Cbap, right? Yes, that is right. Let me just, actually, if I can, Angel, if you can remind me when I'm making a map, I'd like to address this question more specifically because we'll see it in the, we'll see it when in the settings for the new map. But Cbap is particularly important with certain minority populations. So you can look at total population for Hispanic, let's say, and there could be a pretty significant difference between the total population Hispanic in a particular area and citizen voting age population. Sorry, total voting age population in that area versus citizen voting age population in the area. So different groups, different people in the field, as it relates to legal matters, will look at Cbap depending on what they're trying to achieve, let's say with respect to a majority minority district. But when we're building the maps in Dave's Redistricting or any other tool for that matter, you are making the districts equal based on total population. Why is it called WA 116th? Oh, we just finished the 116th Congress. So the 116th Congress of the United States was January 2019 through January 2021. Now we're in the 117th Congress. So we called it that because that is what the census called its official maps lead up until the current Congress. And that's all that represents. So that looks like all the questions. And at this point, I will move on to logging in. How are we doing for time? Okay, good. So I'm going to click login. I'm going to enter my credentials. Okay, and now I am now logged in. This is the default page when you log in. It's My Maps. Now, the big difference here is Maps now has a bunch of categories. Because I'm logged in, I can see more than just official maps. My Maps are all the maps that I have created. And I tend to just make maps and get rid of maps because I use them for all different things, for demos, for training, for my own purposes. You also see these are there's a label feature in Dave's Redistricting. You can put a label on a map or a group of maps, so it's easier to find them. And so these are two labels, categories of label I've created. I can look at maps that I have recently used. I can look at maps that others have shared with me. I can look at maps that I have published. When you publish a map on Dave's Redistricting, you're making it available for any other logged in user of Dave's Redistricting to see. Official maps are the same official maps that I have that I showed you earlier. And then published maps, again, this is the list, and there are thousands of these. These are the lists that other users have created. And again, you can just type in a word, if I spell it right, that is. And this is every map that has the word Virginia in it. I can type in the name of the heading of the column and type an abbreviation for state, and I'll find every Minnesota state. So that's this search is super helpful when you're going through large numbers of maps. So I'm just gonna we'll just start from here. So there are three ways on Dave's Redistricting to create a new map for yourself. The first thing you can do is you can find an existing map. That could be an official map or a published map. You click on it and you have the ability to duplicate it. And there it is. And now if I click this map, I can start editing it as if it's my own. It does not affect the original version of the map by that owner. This is a duplicate copy that I can now mess around with. The second way you can start a new map on Dave's Redistricting is through this import feature. If I have a map as a CSV on my computer if I have created a map on another platform like District R or District Builder, I can export from that platform to Days Redistricting, and then I could find it on my computer and upload it and started editing it in Days Redistricting. And the third way is to click the new map button. And in this case, we're gonna start a map from scratch. And that's what you do here. You end up with a blank map. So when you click new map, you name it. And I'm gonna maintain my my Washington bias. So I'm just naming it WA for RDH demo. Then you pick the state. So when you do this, it defaults to 2020 precincts. It assumes you're going to make a congressional map, but you can make a state legislative map. You can do other, some people will use other if they're making a local map, let's say a county map. It defaults to the current number of districts, but it also looks at data that we now have that suggests whether or not a state is going to gain or lose seats. And if you are a state that it looks like you're going to gain or lose, that number will pop up. So if you were to go to Florida, it would show 2 more than Florida's current. I think Texas would be 3 more. I think California is 1 less. You can always change it. You can make it whatever you want. I want to give, I'm pro Washington. I want to give Washington another district. I can do that. But that's the default. Then, and this is where we'll talk about Cbap, Data Selector identifies your primary data sets. And what happens here is we default to latest total population and latest voting age population. Right now for Days Redistricting, that's all 2019 data. Once 2020 data is out later this year, if you choose latest, it will default to that. So the thing to keep in mind here is if I leave this at the default setting of latest, and I'm actually going to be using 2019 ACS, when 2020 comes out, this map will automatically update to 2020. If I don't want that to happen, I can pick 2019. And when I do that, even after 2020 comes out, my map won't automatically update. I can do that. I can manually say, make it to 2020, but it won't happen automatically. And then this is where Cbap comes into play. In the ACS estimates, the voting age population we have is only Cbap. The census 2010 has voting age. And so right now, when you're building a map in Days Redistricting and you're using the latest or the 2019, it's going to be using Cbap for voting age, okay? Census is still total population, right? So you'll build your districts, you'll see total population to make sure your populations are the same. But if you look at voting age data, you're only going to see citizen voting age data. And lastly, we default to a composite for election data. That election data, actually, we need to change this because we're now going to be building composites using 2018 and 2020, and we started releasing a bunch of that. But the election data for any state, I believe it uses the last 2 presidential elections, the last 2 senatorial elections, and the last gubernatorial and AG election. That's how we create our composites. So right now, my map is ready to get created. I hit apply, and I'm going to see a blank map. And it will open up, and the default view will come into play. And there we are with all of the precincts showing in the state. And now that I'm logged in, I can paint. So a couple of you'll see some new icons given that we're logged in. This is the pan button. This allows you to grab the map and move it around. So especially, if you're zoomed in and you want to move to different parts of the state. You'll click this when you want to paint. You can adjust your brush size. So if you make it larger, you'll just cover, so I'll just show you. If the brush size is small and I'm ready to paint, it'll only pick one precinct at a time. But if I increase my brush size, I can paint larger areas at a time. We can paint at the county, precinct, or block level, and I'll demonstrate all that. So you recall, you'll recall district selector. Oops, sorry. Let's go. There we go. Here are my 10 districts. I haven't assigned any populations yet, so the entire population of the state is in unassigned. Every district has got a 0 population. There we go. Sorry about that. That's a better view. When I want to work on a a district, I click on that individual district, and that's where I will paint. As I add populations to a district, we'll see that count go up and the deviation go down. So painting is super easy. And there's no right or wrong way to do it. You start with a district. I'm going to start with District 1. A good way to start is to start at the county level. If you are in a state that's got, let's say, rural areas where counties are far smaller than a district. So if I'm going to start in the upper northeast corner of the state, I am on, let me add, I don't need labels, because you can look in county details. You can see I'm on Penn, oh boy, I don't even know how to say that. Penn something, I should know that, how to pronounce all 39 counties in Washington, Ouray, maybe. And I see that when I click on this county, I will add 13,377 people to District 1. And then I'm going to add another county, and then I'm going to add another county. And you just add counties. You can add counties until you get close to the target population, and then you might need to go down to the precinct level. So let's just pretend I was getting close, even though I'm not. And I want to start adding at the precinct level. You click precinct. Since the precincts are a little small, I may want to zoom in. So I'm going to click on pan. I'm going to pull this to the center of the map. I'm going to zoom in a bit. And now I will click on the paintbrush again, and I am going to add individual precincts to my District 1. And you keep adding districts. And then at some point, you may be very close to the target population, but you need to go to the block level to get to a small deviation if that's your objective. Before I show that, you can erase anything. So I did not want to add that last precinct. I'm going to erase it. There's a redo and undo button. And so anytime you do something you don't want to do, you have a couple options to fix that. So let's pretend now I'm 600 people away from my target population, and I want to get it down to as close to 0 as I want. What you do next is you go to the block level, and we encourage people to do as much work as they can at the county and precinct level before they go to the blocks, because I think in the 2010 census, there was something like 11 million blocks in the United States. There's lots and lots of them. Some of them are tiny. Some of them have, populations that are in the single digits. So you want to get as close as you can before you start working at the block level. And what you do is you click block, you click on the precinct where you want to work. And when I click here, we call this fracturing the precinct. So now I have broken down the precinct into its component blocks, and I can paint individual blocks. And you could see that this block, if you look to the far right, this block has no people in it. and you'll find lots of them with no people. I'm not sure what's going on. Got a little bit of delay here. Well, that should be turning blue. I'm not quite sure what's going on there. And here, this block has 57 people. Something funky is going on with the site. I'm not quite sure. I apologize about that. But basically, I would be adding individual blocks to the precinct. Sorry, individual blocks to the district. And then when I'm done doing that, and again, I don't know what, oh, okay. Sorry, here's what's going on. Remember I showed you how you can erase and undo things? Well, when you erase, you have to click on unassigned because when you erase, you're putting something back in the unassigned category. So I was not being a very skilled user of Dave's redistricting right there, and I was not on the district I need to add to. So we're going to now add blocks. And Angel, I know this is being this is being recorded, so you're going to have to edit that part out of it, please. So here I am adding individual blocks. And when you're done adding blocks, you click the green check mark, and that adds those blocks to the precinct. Oh, sorry, to the district. And now if I zoom out to the state view, that is what my district is looking like. When you're done with a district, which obviously we're not here because there's still a ways to go, but if we were, you can lock that district, and then you will not inadvertently make a change to that district. Very, very useful tool. I use it all the time. Basically, each time I think I'm done with a district, I lock it so I can't accidentally change it. Next, I want to go back to custom overlays and describe that feature. I mentioned it briefly when I was not logged in. So when I click on the gear icon, I have the ability to basically import a shape into this map. So if I have created, let's say, a community of interest on Representable or District R, or I can actually, in effect, create a community of interest on Dave's redistricting by just starting a map and adding a few precincts together or blocks and stopping the map there. And that I could say is my community. And I could basically export that to my computer and then re-import it back into Dave's redistricting, which is what I've actually done here. Same effect as importing from a third-party site. But if I click import new, it'll ask me to choose a file from my computer. And I have actually saved a shape in my downloads. It's right here. So I'm clicking on that. I click open. That's the name of the file. I'm going to call this, WA COI, and I could, add a description to it, whatever that might be. And then I click import overlay, and that file will show up now in my customs overlay box. And now I click on that community of interest. I click apply, and you see this kind of palish pink. That is the community of interest that I created. And now, for example, my objective might be to create the next district in my map that does not split this community of interest, because I want this community of interest to be intact. So that's one sort of example of how you can use custom overlays to represent a community within the map you're building. So now if I were building District 2, and let's say I was at the county level adding, I can go ahead and add counties, and there's my District 2, and I am going to lock it. And I've not split this community of interest. Okay. Last thing I want to show is how you can fix mistakes in your map. Particularly, look at Puget Sound area. there are just many, many small precincts. It's easy to inadvertently miss one, assign one incorrectly. And we have tools to help you prevent or fix that in the case you do it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open a map I have created called Connecticut 2020 Errors. And so we'll go to the East Coast now. So when you look at this, this is a map I created, and you'll see 3 mistakes in it. This precinct has not been assigned. And these 2 precincts, you can either think of those as stray precincts, or you can think of this green district here as being not contiguous. Now, for the purposes of this demonstration, I've made very large errors in this map. But imagine, if you will, if you were in the city of Hartford, Connecticut, and you missed a small precinct, or you were at the block level and you missed a tiny, tiny block, or you misassigned a small geography and you could not find it just looking at the map. And what might happen is you'll see this. Oh, my map can't be correct because I've got some populations unassigned. Or if I was in statistics, I see not only the unassigned population, but I see the error message about there being the red X that I have a non-contiguous district. So again, I've made these very large so we could see them for the purposes of this demonstration. So if you have errors in the map, we have this unassigned and more feature, which allows you to fix those errors. So 3 things that you can do with this tool. Well, the location is bad, but so remember, there's this unassigned precinct right here. If I click Find Unassigned Precincts, it brings me to that precinct, and I now can paint it. So I click the paintbrush. This looks like it's the purplish district, and I've now filled in that unassigned precinct. If I snap back to my full state view, I have another option called Reassign Stray Precincts. Now, what Reassign Stray Precincts does is if it sees a precinct that is obviously wrong and it's sort of obviously clear how it ought to be fixed, this feature will do that. So if we look at the green district here, it's pretty obvious that that should be part of the blue district 1. So when I click Reassign Stray Precincts, that just fixes automatically. And it tells me 1 stray precinct was reassigned. Now, with respect to this obviously wrong district, there's a reason why the Days Redistricting will not automatically reassign this. It's clear that it's not contiguous, or it's not part of green, right? But given that it borders blue and orange, the application doesn't know whether this should be part of District 4 or part of District 1. So instead, what will happen here, when I click Find Non-Contiguous Districts, it first takes me to the non-contiguous part. Then for context, it shows me the rest of the district. So if I go back here, I now need to decide if this should be blue or this should be orange. Now I inserted the error. I know this was part of District 1. Also visually, it kind of looks like it ought to be part of District 1, but I know that's a mistake I made. So all I need to do here is click District 1 in Selector, and now I've reassigned it. And I could zoom out. I see there are no unassigned populations, so I fixed that problem. If I go to statistics, I no longer see a not contiguous district. Okay. Last thing I want to talk about, and then we can open up for questions. is I'll go back to the oops, sorry, let me go. I meant to go back to maps. So about data, information about the data on our site. What's new is a way to find out what's been added on the site recently. Feedback is a way, if you think there's an error in our site, you can report that to us, and we'll be sure to take a look at it. Last thing I want to show you is back on the homepage. We have a link to YouTube. We have a series of tutorial videos on YouTube that show you how to use different components of the site. We have a link to medium.com. I already had mentioned that, where we have a whole bunch of articles posted. We have a link to Twitter. We have a link to our Facebook page, and we also have a link where we allow people to donate. We are not a nonprofit, so there's no tax deductibility if you help fund us. But we're all volunteers, and we give our time, and we also financially support it, because even though it's a volunteer organization, we have day in and day out hosting costs. So if people want to support data redistricting, they can do it that way. So I think I've gone through all the features. I'm going to, Angel, I see there's some more stuff in chat, so I'm going to open that up and see if there is, and look at these questions. And where do I have to go to? Okay, we got that one. It will be going to we'll be going to the PL, the day the PL files that are released in September. Yes. The question was, will DRA be using legacy format data that is released in August, or just I should double check that, but I believe we're going to be going straight to the PL data in September. And actually, someone named Ali asked that question. Since I might not remember, you can post that to our feedback, and someone will answer that question for you with a higher degree of certainty. So let's see. In North Carolina, counties are grouped by clusters, meaning districts have to be drawn entirely in that group of counties. Will these clusters be added to keep us from drawing lines outside the designated lines? From drawing outside that. So I'm not familiar with this particular issue. It sounds like it's North Carolina specific. I know of no plans to do that. And I don't know what would be involved in doing it on the site, but again, Stephen, a great question to post on our feedback, and someone could then, we might not be aware of that at this point. Maybe someone else is, and it's something we could definitely look at. Oh, plus Stephen's question, there are various restrictions by state in keeping certain jurisdictions together. Is there any in-map guidance? No, we do not have any state by state specific information for you to use when you're building a map. We have those links to those reference materials, but we do not do that. Again, it's something you could post to feedback. We've got a long list of things we'd like to do, and people are always coming up with good ideas for us to do new things. And we do them when we can, but we are not able to get everything. But sometimes people come forward with questions, and we say, yeah, it's a really good idea, and we do it. By any chance, is there a way to place pins in maps? There is not right now, but it is something we're actually looking at presently. So that is something that's come up before. We're also looking at this concept around kind of group collaboration, places where groups can collaborate. you know what, let me show one other thing. Speaking of collaboration, let me just open a map here. Here we'll open our, so I'm going to open, oops, sorry, I went too far. Let's go back. When I click on my Connecticut map, the one we just fixed, you see this. So again, that's if I want to edit, share. I can share this map to anyone on the, well, I could share it anywhere. I can send that URL to anybody. When I click allow editing and share that, it's sort of like a Google Docs editing scenario where multiple people can edit the same map. So you can work as a group on an individual map. We are, though, starting to think about, are there other things we could do within Days Redistricting to make it more of a place or a space where people can work together. I believe District Builder's getting ready to launch something like that, and it's something we've heard about from others. I already talked about duplicate. You can duplicate any map and edit it. I can, if I click publish, I make this map available to everyone on Days Redistricting. I can create a label. So for example, I can add this to my, well, I can create a new, map for demos, right? And now that label's been assigned, will be assigned to that map, and I can have a whole group of maps labeled that way. So that is the end of the tutorial, the demo for me. I'm going to stop sharing. And again, if there's any more questions, I'm happy to take those on.